Today, we're going to be talking about the updates that we've had since our last webinar at the beginning of March, some upcoming events that we'll be doing, the MERS and Power updates, and then I'm going to go over a lot of our settings in our PFA settings that you may or may not be aware of. So for updates, and I will go through the list of updates and then I will show them in ProFund. So for payroll, we removed the MyWham 1028 file button and fixed an issue that prevented the MESC taxable wage limit form from saving the entered value in the quarterly tax report menu item. So now when you go to file your state taxes and you choose Michigan as your state tax, you will no longer see the MyWham 1028 file button. It'll just be the MIUI button, as obviously the state of Michigan is no longer, Leo is no longer using the MyWham. So, and then also when you enter in 9,000 and create the file, it will now save it so you don't have to keep typing that in every time. So that has been fixed. We updated the uncalculate payroll deductions to no longer allow uncalculating a payroll when the quarterly taxes for that payroll have been calculated. So if you've already calculated your payroll, your 941 for that quarter, we now stop you from uncalculating payroll deductions as that could change your 941. However, if you happen to calculate 941 early, you could always uncalculate the 941 and then uncalculated payroll, that is fine. But we just don't want you to just you have to do an extra step to uncalculated payroll if you've already calculated the 941s. And additionally, we added a warning when checks tied to a payroll have been cleared in bank recs. So now if a check has already been paid and cleared, we want to make sure that there's an extra warning in there so you don't accidentally uncalculate a payroll that you didn't want to. So now in bank types, benefits, and deduction types, it'll now reset the parameter titles to defaults when the calc type is changed. So a lot of we have defaults for parameter titles, and each on those menu items, they have the 5 parameters, and depending on what calc type, changes what the parameters are. So if you had one set up in like banks for one bank and then change the bank type to a different one, then that particular parameter could mean something totally different in the calculation. So we wanted to make sure that gets updated so you don't accidentally have a bad value in one of those parameters. All our ACH files are compliant with the new NACHA rules. We made that change a while ago. You shouldn't have a problem if you're having issues uploading either payroll or AP files. Please let us know and we'll make the necessary corrections. But as far as we know, we've adjusted our files to be compliant with the new NACHA rules. We added the ability to hide confirmation messages on a new cancel and save click and the save clicks by menu item. There is a there's settings area where you can specify which ones you want to show or hide, or when you click save, there'll be a little checkbox at the bottom that just says do not show again. This is per menu item, so if you want it for all menu items, you might just want to go to PFA settings, but now you can remove the confirmation messages on new, cancel, and save. So like when you click save and you want to hide the confirmation message, it will no longer say save successfully. It'll just save it. And if there was no errors, you won't see anything. We updated the account control used to auto select the text when selecting the edit box. We improved the performance of all the search modes, so we did some work on the account control. We added a setting on the user options in the settings window called show inactive items. Checking the box will show all inactive items when loading a maintenance window by default. So when you go into like inventory or employees, we have that limit button at the top. So we now have an option in settings that when you load the window, if you have it checked, that limit button will be basically like it's clicked and it'll show both inactive or active. The default option will be unchecked like it is now, But if you want to, every time you load into like inventory item where you want to see both active or inactive all the time, you can select that setting in PFA settings. We updated the GL post load screen to fill in the effective date field with the highest effective date in the selected journal. So when you select a journal from the dropdown, the date would populate with the highest date of transaction in the journal. If the default, if you select a new journal, the effective date field will remain blank. And if you don't enter in a date and you click load for that new journal, it'll default to the current date or whatever day it's on. So that way you should have a better idea of what date is being loaded in the GL post. We added the transaction post date to the bottom of the GL, the general ledger post window. So you can see what date the transaction was on, not the effective date, but the post date. We updated the general ledger post to no longer carry over previous transaction information when creating a new. So when you create a new, it's just everything is blank. So there's nothing. The account control is not automatically filled. When entering a new transaction, the focus will start on the account control. So when you click new, the focus will automatically be on the account control, and you can just automatically start typing. We updated a GL post to no longer show an entry with an empty fund in the fund balance data grid when adding a new transaction. So you won't see an empty fund like you did before. And then outside of GL post, we fixed an issue in the cost of road spread and the fringe benefit spread that prevented the last used credit account number from automatically filling in when loading the window. So we do save the last used account window and it wasn't loading. Now it automatically fills in the account control at the bottom. We updated the state trunk line file to report the price each for all materials to a 4 decimal precision, which it was a 2 decimal, but we had some issues with that with rounding, so we extended it to 4 decimals. All right, so payroll, we did quarterly tax reports. The second button is gone. It's just the MI 1028. And I'm going to go ahead and change this 7-digit. Just save it on desktop. And then now if I close and reopen, it now says 9,000. So that has been fixed. And then in bank types, we have parameter titles for each bank type and default values. And some of these are default that you can hand enter them in, but we do have default titles. But if you change the value here and click save, it'll pop up a warning that it does not update the existing default parameters, but it will update the parameter titles. Say parameter titles change. And they also warn you that any existing overrides that an employee has may be incorrect with the new calculation type. So we want to make sure that you're aware of these changes so you don't have unintended consequences of changing a parameter on a bank benefit or deduction. I don't want to change that. Just like a deduction types, you have your parameters, and if you change, same thing, it'll pop up the same warning with the different language of a deduction. If you click cancel, it will not make the changes. It will not save it. So those are a couple of things we did. And just when you click save, we have this do not show again. You could check it. And then when you click save, no message pops up. You can also view that under user options. We added this huge selection grid where you can see any of these checks. If they're checked, it'll show the message. And if they're not checked, it won't show. So you could just change it to all, uncheck, and click save. And then now those won't have any save confirmation. So if you don't want to see any kind of confirmation messages, anything like that, confirm delete, it's confirm delete, confirm save, or confirm cancel. Just like Delete is when you go ahead and delete it and it says delete has been successfully deleted or something. It won't show those messages. All right. In General Ledger Post. So if it's next journal and you don't specify an effective date and you click load, it'll use it'll use the today's date as the effective date. And it automatically went right to the account control. I don't know what my search settings are, so I'm just going to drop down, test, and save. I can say do not show again. I can click new automatically, and I forgot to type in amount. There we go. See, and then they have the post date of 4/13/2026 on here. And then if I click commit and that. So then if I go to like an old journal, like 2024, it automatically fills in the date with 12/31 of 2024, and that'll be the effective date of all new transactions if you choose. So we added that in there to help so you can get a better idea of what effective date is being used on all new transactions. So you have the post date, the description, and then when you click new, it'll be 12/31 of 2024. I'm gonna commit that. Okay, and then in the cost of roads, this is now automatically being filled in properly like it should. So both cost of roads and fringe benefit that credit account. So for upcoming events, our next webinar on May the 4th will in fact be our annual webinar. Every year we like to do a bigger webinar that we go instead of our usual how we usually do things. We like to talk a little bit more about our plans for the next upcoming year as our fiscal year ends June 30th. So as we look forward to the next year and some of the future plans and a look back at the previous year, we will be highlighting what we released this past year and then what we hope to get accomplished in this next year. We will have a much bigger Samsara update, and we are working at our new preventive maintenance. And if it is ready to at least to be shown, then we will get a look. We will show off our new preventive maintenance program. So we are working with Samsara, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will have a good. We hope to also resume the meetings here once we get ready on our end for Samsara. So the time will be from 10 a.m. to 11:30 instead of 11. It will be just a little bit longer to allow for extra time for questions and bigger topics. And then also we will be attending the Finance and HR conference in May in Grand Rapids. I believe that's May 12th through the 14th. I will be there for the welcome reception as we were last year. No, I found out this morning we did get the invite, so we will be sponsoring the welcome reception as we usually do. So we will definitely be attending. I will definitely be attending, and George will most likely be there, and Brett might make an appearance as well. We're not sure if he's going to be up for going or not. So we just want to highlight that we will be there in person at the conference in Grand Rapids. So it's just some upcoming events that we'll be doing either or hosting or attending. So MERS is now under Empower, and we found out that there are 4 different payroll submission methods, and we support 2 of them. There's the guided payroll process, which is meant for municipalities or road commissions with less than 50 employees, so a little bit smaller. So from what I was looking into, this is you can enter the payroll information or you can upload using the file. That is something that we were informed of before I went on vacation at the beginning of May, or beginning of April, and I have finished the file. It'll be in our next release. I'm assuming it's the same file format. Each road commission doesn't have the unique file format. I might be talking to MERS a little bit about calling them and seeing about that because I didn't know about the fact that they had separate processes depending on the size of your commission. So I just assumed everyone would use the Second one, the payroll data interchange. That's the one that we were sent from MERS, the CSV file uploads that everyone had to send in to test. And they should be working. The format should not have changed from December until now. So this one is meant for larger road commissions with more than 50 employees. We produced the e-file for the three plans, the 457, the defined contribution, and the healthcare savings. The defined benefit did not change. Our next update will include a bottom, most likely at the bottom of the MERS export file that will create the correct guided payroll process e-file. Also, let us know if the file was rejected and we will make the necessary corrections. We'll also try calling Empower to see exactly what they're looking for. And if anybody else has any additional information, please either call us or send us an email, especially if you're using the guided payroll process. Because when I was looking at it and reading their documentation, it almost sounded like what you set up is like a payroll roster. And then when you go to enter the payroll, you hand enter in the contribution amounts and you don't even use any kind of file. You just use because there's only like three or four. So that one I am not sure on. Like I said, we don't use MERS or Empower rather. So we don't really have anywhere to test or look too deeply into it, but looking at their documentation and their help on it, that is what I gleaned from it. And hopefully everyone who's using the payroll data interchange hasn't had a problem with our files. If you had a problem, please let us know and we will make the necessary corrections to the file format. It should be fine. Like I said, I didn't see any changes from December until now. So if it worked in December, it should be fine now. So we offer a lot of different settings that you may or may not be aware of. The organization ones are pretty straightforward. Under accounting defaults, we have your fiscal year start date. The work week start date is for, as of now, it's mainly used for the no tax on overtime. It tells us what day that you start your work week so we can calculate a 7 day time period for the 40 hours. You can set your default overtime payroll type. So to whatever payroll type you want to. You have the different payroll types. And then equipment rental rates, it'll show the current year that you're on. Obviously, I haven't done any on this database, so it's zero, but if you've done, it should be 2026. Obviously, chart of accounts layouts you should be all familiar with. So the main settings I want to look at are some of these other like system settings, my work, and user options. So for these first couple, insert current date on new AP invoices. When you click on a new in our accounts payable, it'll fill in with the current date. And then insert vendor name on new AP invoices is when you click on a new AP invoice, when you create a new invoice in payables, it'll automatically fill it with the previous vendor. That'll be the one that's selected. There's a duplicate invoice check is when you select a vendor, it'll pop up their invoice, their previous invoice, and the duplicate check will be, it'll pop up a message saying there are duplicate numbers. Do you wish to continue? So print memo on accounts payables checks, it'll print the memo on all the AP checks. Enable Active Directory single sign-on is something that it's in your Microsoft user options. When you log into Microsoft, you can set it up. I believe we still honor that, where if you log into Microsoft, then you try to load into profile, it'll automatically pick up your login from Microsoft. So I don't know how many people actually use it, but it is an option. Obviously, we have the password policy. The use work orders and use job costing is for the payables as well, along with use purchase orders when you go into enter payables. If you're using purchase orders and work orders in any of the fields, they won't be blank. They'll show the purchase orders. The enable quantity and value on hand check is for inventory. So we can check to see if they have quantity. in value, or we could just ignore it and you could post even if they don't you can post a charge even if they don't have any. So that's that check. The update bank history when committing a calculated PR journal. So when you commit a journal in a payroll journal in payroll post, it automatically updates the bank history. But if you don't want that to change when you commit a already calculated PR journal, you don't the bank history doesn't have to change, does not have to get updated. It will still stay the same. So if you only like the bank history to be updated on non-calculated payroll journals, you can uncheck this one. Then for equipment is incentive rate, if you check this box, it'll apply the PR factor to equipment incentive rate. So for example, if you do overtime, which is time and a half, if and you then you have an incentive rate of like $2 an hour, if this is checked, it will add multiply that $2 by $1.50 or by 1.5, so it'll end up being $3 for the incentive rate instead of two. So if you want that option, if the incentive rate gets applied after or before the PR factor gets applied. And then for purchase orders, these are the different options for a purchase order. We have a ton of different styles for your PDF. If you click the styles button, it'll pop up. These are all the different styles and what they look like. Layouts, we offer 3 different layouts depending on what you want your layout 3, 2, 1, depending on what you want your purchase orders to look like. And we do have like an auto approve where we can approve purchase orders. And you want to set up like an auto approve where anything under 500 gets auto approved, but anything over 500 has to be approved by, has to have somebody come in there and actually approve it in the purchase order. So those are some purchase order settings. In my work, we have the authorization zones. Enabling this will block the time card, the not the time card, but the time clock from being punched in, punched out unless it's in a zone. And it'll allow the authorization zones menu item to appear. We also have an override in an employee setting if that particular employee is not bound to the zone. We also have a checkbox for now you can require time cards to be entered in an authorized zone. So just authorized zones, all it does is it blocks the time clock. So the punch in, punch out. However, you can also block time cards to be entered. Allow negative inventory. You can see if you want them to enter negative inventory and negative inventory amounts on the time card attachments. The IP addresses are basically, I know we've worked with a good bit of you on getting it straightened out. So your computers don't always have the most accurate IP address. Phones, because they have a GPS in them, they tend to know exactly, they're pretty much their precise location. But sometimes computers can say, like, for example, ours sometimes say we're in Detroit and we're not really in Detroit. So if you set up an authorized zone in your building and it seems like when you try to log into the machine and you enter in my work, it's not working. It's probably because the IP address is somewhere else. So you can get the computer's IP address and whitelist it so it'll show up as part of the authorized zone. And then some settings, we allow employees to view pay stubs on my work. We allow employees to view W-4s. You can submit a W-4 on my work. You can view a W-2 on my work. And then along with that, you can select what year you want the W-2s to be available. So if you don't want them to view 2020, and it's only with the last 2 years of W-2s. And then we also have allow partial time code import. That is if you go into import my work or import time cards now and import a time card, it'll import, and you select an employee, it'll import all the good time cards and not the bad ones. If this is unchecked, then it will not import any time cards for that person if one of them is bad. Go to payroll. I don't. Go to import time cards. Does he have any available? Yes. Let's see. So he has allow partial import. That's fine. Go back into import. I gotta pull it up. There it is. So for example, like this guy, he's all fine. But if one of them was bad, so let's just say, for example, if this bottom one was had an error and it was red, then it wouldn't allow you. Then allow partial would import the top two time or top one. There's only two. The top one, but leave this one. However, if you don't have that checked, it would not import any of them. So that's we do allow a partial, and that's what we mean by partial import. And that is another thing that will be fixed in this upcoming update. For example, if you minimize and click this, it will no longer pop up with this message. It'll pull up the window like it did before. So that has been fixed. All right, let's go back into my work. I believe those are all the settings. And then we have a good bit of options for this is per user. So based on your who's logged in, we have the online help. If you want to, if it just takes you to the online help instead of the PD document. Show inactive items is something I talked about earlier. It'll show the inactive items by default. So like if I click this and I want to click done. And also when you save a setting, when you change a setting, please click done. Clicking X will cancel. You want to click done and that'll save your setting. Let me go ahead and log out. I need to get back to my desktop. There we go. And if I go into like payroll, employees, you see how the limit button is no longer a different color. It's now not clicked, and you see both I and A's by default. So if I click it now, you only see A's. This is like the default that is in your settings. But if you change it to what I have, it'll now show this. And just like when you click refresh, I don't want to hit docs. If you have it like that and you click refresh, it'll revert back to the default from your settings in user options. So I just wanted to highlight that setting. Now, where do my settings go? There. All right, user options. Display confirmation on closes. When you close the window, it closes the, it'll show you, are you sure you want to close the whole program. There's a group tree on all reports. When you run a report on the side of that report, you can see the group tree that we have. It's useful. And also you can hide or show report parameters at the bottom of the report. This is to show or hide inactive accounts on the account control. And then this is to use either box mode or the drop down mode for the accounts. And then this is if you want to use a delimiter or not, a plus, or just have it one long line. And then this is your account search options. I'm assuming you guys are familiar with some of these account control settings where there's no search, or you start with the first and last segment, or use specific segment. I know a lot of you, including myself, will use 3 or 4. So, and then over here we have all the menu items with the confirm, cancel, confirm, delete, and confirm save. So when you go ahead and cancel something or delete something or save something, they'll no longer be the confirmation messages. So if you don't like seeing pop-ups, then this is your way you can get rid of them, and it will no longer show the success messages. And then in personalization, you can change. We have a bunch of different themes you can change. Obviously, it's the window, your default menu item, when you first load in, what you want to see, and then the clear Windows save states is mainly used when you load in a menu item and it always pops up in that one place on that one screen. So if you happen to like get a new machine or new monitors, you might want to click the clear saved Windows states before you change over. So that way the states aren't in a position off screen. Every now and then that can happen. Messaging, we have our default one, which is our default profile, which is no reply at message.profileaccounting.com. You can add a profile, any profile you want. You can do Microsoft, Spark Post, SMTP, or Gmail. Like for Microsoft, you now sign in online to verify your email. So same with Google. API setup is used for Smarty Streets. We provide Smarty Streets, so when you go into verify an address, you don't have to put any, you don't have to pay for it. We get like, I don't know, like 50,000 a year, so we don't even come close to that. But if you need to like verify an address, you just click in like in it's not gonna let me do it. Employees. It's this little green button, and then it'll change the address. If it finds it, it'll change it to what the official address is. So anytime we have like this address area, there'll be a little there to verify that this address is valid. So if you never need to verify an address. Also, when we get Samsara up to date, the Samsara, you will have to get a token, an authorization token from Samsara, and this is where it will go, and this is what we will use to access your data from their website to pull it into ProFund. And then last is your documentation setup. If you're having a network share, you enter the username and password for that documentation. So
You are now working smarter with ProFund Accounting. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.